It was raining the night my life changed forever, the kind of relentless rain that blurred the city lights into streaks of gold and red, turning everything into something unreal, almost like a warning I chose to ignore. I stood outside the iron gates, my fingers curled tightly into my coat sleeves, trying to stop the slight trembling that wouldn't go away. I knew what I was about to do, and more importantly, I knew there would be no turning back once I stepped inside. The gates slowly opened before I even touched it, as if they had been expecting me all along, and that alone sent a chill down my spine. Everything about this place felt controlled, watched, calculated. I took a deep breath and walked in anyway. The mansion was even more intimidating up close, all glass and stone and silence, the kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful, but heavy, like it was hiding something underneath. A man in a black suit led me through the hallway without saying a word, his expression unreadable, his steps perfectly measured. No one here smiled. No one even looked curious. It was like I had already been accepted as part of something I didn't understand. When we reached the main room, he stopped and gestured for me to go in alone. That was the moment my heartbeat started to pick up. "You're 3 minutes late." His voice came from the shadows before I even saw him. Calm, low, controlled, and cold enough to make me freeze in place. I slowly lifted my gaze and found him sitting on a dark leather sofa, one leg crossed over the other, a glass of whiskey resting loosely in his hand. He didn't look at me right away, and somehow that made it worse. When he finally did, it felt like the air shifted. His eyes were sharp, observant, the kind that missed nothing. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "Traffic." A faint smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I don't accept excuses." Of course he didn't. Someone like him wouldn't. I forced myself to step forward anyway, even though every instinct in my body was screaming at me to leave while I still could. "You asked me to come here, to talk about the contract." "Yes." He set the glass down and stood up, and the moment he did, I realized just how much presence he had. He wasn't just tall or well-dressed, it was something else, something heavier, like the entire room adjusted around him. He walked toward me slowly, deliberately, and stopped just close enough that I could feel the tension between us. "You know who I am?" "I've heard enough." "Good." His gaze didn't leave mine. "Then let's not waste time. We're getting married." For a second, I thought I misunderstood him. "What?" "A contract marriage," he clarified, as if that made it any more normal. I let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "And you think I'll agree to that?" "You will." There was no hesitation in his voice, no doubt, no question. Just certainty. He reached for a folder on the table and slid it toward me. I didn't want to look, but I did anyway. My heart dropped the moment I saw the name. My brother. Medical reports. Test results. Everything. "Heart condition," he said calmly. "Severe. He needs surgery." My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. "Cost, $2 million." The number felt unreal, suffocating. "You investigated me?" "That's basic." He stepped closer, just enough to make it impossible to ignore him. "You need money. And I need a wife." I swallowed, forcing myself to hold his gaze. "Why me?" "Because you're clean," he said without hesitation. "No ties to my world. No ambition. No one will suspect anything. And most importantly," he paused, studying my reaction, "you're easy to control." The word stung more than I expected. "I'm not something you can control." "No," he corrected smoothly. "You're a choice." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, the sound echoing faintly through the walls. Time felt like it was closing in. I didn't have options. That was the truth I kept trying to avoid. "What are the terms?" I asked finally. A slight shift in his expression told me I had already made my decision, even if I hadn't said it out loud yet. He raised 3 fingers. "First, you don't fall in love with me. Second, you don't interfere with my business. Third, When I say it's over, you leave. No questions. No attachments. I let out a slow breath. Sounds like I'm the only one taking the risk. You get the money, he replied. Your brother lives. Silence stretched between us, heavy and unavoidable. I could see my brother in my mind, lying in that hospital bed, struggling to breathe, pretending to be strong for me. I didn't have time. I didn't have choices. How long? 1 year. 1 year of my life, in exchange for his. I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again, the hesitation gone. Fine. He didn't look surprised. Not even a little. Smart decision. He extended his hand toward me, steady, confident, like this moment had already been decided long before I arrived. Welcome, my wife. I stared at his hand, fully aware that everything would change the second I touched it. My freedom. My life. Maybe even who I was as a person. But none of that mattered as much as the one thing I couldn't lose. Slowly, I reached out and placed my hand in his. His grip was firm, warm, and final. And just like that, it was done. What I didn't realize then was that I hadn't just agreed to a contract. I had stepped into a world where trust didn't exist, where power was everything, and where the man I had just married was far more dangerous than I could ever imagine. And the worst part wasn't the danger. It was the fact that, somewhere along the way, I was going to fall in love with him anyway. The next morning didn't feel real. For a few seconds after I opened my eyes, I forgot where I was, but the unfamiliar ceiling, the silence, and the weight in my chest quickly brought everything back. The contract. The marriage. Him. I sat up slowly, the soft sheets slipping from my shoulders, and looked around the room. It was large, elegant, almost too perfect, like something out of a life that didn't belong to me. Nothing felt personal. Nothing felt warm. It was just, controlled. Just like him. A quiet knock came from the door before it opened. A woman stepped in, dressed neatly, her posture straight, her expression calm but distant. Good morning, ma'am. The word felt strange, almost unreal. Mr. Kang is waiting for you downstairs. Of course he was. I nodded and got out of bed, trying to ignore the tight feeling in my chest. Everything was happening too fast, and yet there was no time to process any of it. When I walked into the dining room, he was already there, sitting at the head of the table, reading something on his phone, completely at ease as if nothing about this situation was unusual. He didn't look up immediately, and somehow that annoyed me more than it should have. You're late, he said again, like it was becoming a habit. I just woke up, I replied, pulling out a chair. That's not an excuse. I almost rolled my eyes, but stopped myself. Are you always like this? Efficient? He asked calmly, finally glancing at me. No. Insufferable. For a brief second, something flickered in his eyes, something close to amusement, but it disappeared just as quickly. You'll get used to it. I don't plan to stay long enough to get used to anything. You already agreed to 1 year. Doesn't mean I have to enjoy it. He set his phone down, his attention fully on me now, and that alone made the room feel smaller. Enjoyment isn't part of the agreement. Clearly. I muttered, reaching for the coffee just to give myself something to do. A moment of silence passed, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was measured. Like everything between us had an unspoken boundary already. Then he spoke again. We'll be announcing the marriage tonight. I froze mid-sip. Tonight? Yes. That's a little fast, don't you think? No, his tone didn't change. The faster it's public, the more believable it is. I set the cup down slowly. And what exactly am I supposed to do? Stand next to me. Smile when necessary. Don't say anything unnecessary. I let out a dry laugh. So basically, be decoration. If that's how you want to see it. I leaned back slightly, studying him. And what do you get out of this, really? Excuse me? It's not a suggestion. I'm not a prisoner. No, he said calmly, but you are my responsibility now. That doesn't mean you control where I go. It does if it keeps you alive. The words landed heavier than anything else he had said so far. What does that mean? He looked at me for a long second, as if deciding how much to say. It means there are people who would use you against me without hesitation. A chill ran through me. Because of you. Yes. I swallowed, trying to process that. This wasn't just a contract anymore. This was danger. Real danger. And you didn't think to mention that before? You wouldn't have agreed. He was right, and we both knew it. That only made it worse. Before I could respond, he walked past me, stopping just long enough to say, "Get ready by 6. You'll be introduced to a lot of people tonight. Don't trust any of them." Should I trust you? I asked before I could stop myself. He paused. Just for a second. Then he continued walking. No. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt much bigger, and much more dangerous than it had the night before. Hours passed slower than I expected. Every room I walked through felt like it held secrets, like there were things happening behind closed doors that I wasn't meant to see. Staff moved quietly, efficiently, never asking questions, never offering information. It made me realize just how deep this world went, and how little I understood it. By the time evening came, I was standing in front of a mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. The dress they gave me was elegant, dark, fitting perfectly in a way that made me look like I belonged at his side. That was the point, I supposed. To make the lie believable. When I walked downstairs, he was already waiting. And for the first time, I noticed something different. Not in the way he looked, but in the way he looked at me. His gaze lingered for a second longer than usual, as if he hadn't expected this. "You clean up well," he said. "Don't sound so surprised." I'm not. But there was something in his voice that said otherwise. We didn't speak much on the way. The car ride was quiet, but not empty. It was filled with something unspoken, something building, something neither of us acknowledged. When we arrived, the atmosphere changed instantly. Lights, people, voices, power. This wasn't just a party. It was a gathering of people who mattered. Dangerous people. I could feel it in the way they looked at him, the respect, the fear, the calculation. And when they looked at me, it was curiosity. "Stay close," he murmured. I wasn't planning to wander off. Good. His hand moved to the small of my back, steady, possessive, guiding me forward. The touch was brief, but it sent an unexpected tension through me. Then the room went quiet. All eyes turned toward us. "This is my wife." The words echoed in my head louder than they should have. Wife. Not partner. Not arrangement. Wife. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't considered before. This might be a contract to me. But to everyone else in this room, it was real. And if I made a single mistake, it wouldn't just cost me the deal. It could cost me everything. The silence in the room didn't last long, but it was enough to make my heartbeat feel louder than everything else around me. Conversations slowly resumed, glasses clinked again, music filled the air, but something had already shifted. I could feel it in the way people looked at us, more precisely, the way they looked at me. Curiosity, calculation, even a hint of disbelief. I wasn't supposed to be here, and they all knew it. "This way," he said quietly, his hand still resting lightly against my back, guiding me forward as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I leaned slightly closer to him as we walked. "You didn't tell me I'd be walking into a room full of people who look like they want to dissect me." "They're assessing you," he replied calmly. "That doesn't make it better." "It shouldn't." Of course it shouldn't. Nothing about this world was meant to feel comfortable. We stopped near a group of men who immediately straightened when they saw him. The shift in their posture was subtle but clear. Respect. Or fear. Maybe both. Mr. Kang, one of them said, offering a polite nod. He acknowledged them with the slightest movement of his head. Gentlemen. Their attention quickly turned to me. And this must be my wife. Again, he said it so easily, like the word belonged there. Like I belonged there. I forced a small smile, trying to match the role I had agreed to play. Nice to meet you. They greeted me politely, but I could feel the unspoken questions behind their eyes. Who was I? Where did I come from? Why me? I didn't have answers that would satisfy them, and I knew it. Dance with me. His voice cut through my thoughts before I even realized what was happening. What? Now. Before I could argue, his hand was already taking mine, leading me toward the center of the room. The music had shifted to something slower, smoother, and suddenly I was very aware of how close he was. One hand holding mine, the other resting at my waist, firm and steady. I don't dance, I muttered under my breath. You do tonight. I didn't agree to this. You agreed to be convincing. I clenched my jaw slightly, but didn't pull away. He was right. Again. That was starting to annoy me more than anything else. Relax, he said quietly. I am relaxed. You're stiff. Maybe because I'm dancing with a man who threatens people for a living. A faint smirk touched his lips. I don't threaten. I act. That didn't help. But as the music continued, something strange happened. I started to match his movements, slowly, naturally, like my body was adjusting without asking for permission. He led effortlessly, his grip never too tight, never uncertain. For someone so cold, so controlled, the way he moved was precise. Almost gentle. Better, he murmured. Don't get used to it. I wasn't planning to. For a brief moment, it almost felt normal. Almost. Until it didn't. Still choosing strangers over what's familiar. The voice came from behind me, smooth, sharp, and unmistakably female. Everything in me tensed before I even turned around. She was standing just a few steps away, elegant, confident, the kind of woman who didn't need to try to command attention. Her dress was striking, her posture flawless, but it was her eyes that stood out the most. They weren't curious like the others. They were personal. Kang, she said his name like it meant something more than just recognition. His hand on my waist didn't move, but I felt the shift in him immediately. Subtle. Controlled. But there. You weren't invited. She smiled slightly. And yet, here I am. Her gaze slid to me, slow and deliberate, taking in every detail like she was measuring something. So this is her. I held her gaze, refusing to look away. And you are? Her smile widened just a little. Someone who knows your husband better than you ever will. The word husband sounded different coming from her. Sharper. More real. That doesn't sound like an introduction, I replied calmly. It's not. Clara. Kang's voice cut in, firmer now. A warning. So that was her name. Clara. She looked back at him, unfazed. You move on quickly. This isn't your concern. Everything about you is my concern. The tension between them was undeniable now, thick enough to feel. Whatever history they had, it wasn't simple. I glanced at him briefly, then back at her. If you have something to say, say it. Her attention returned to me, interest flickering in her eyes. Careful. Confidence like that can be dangerous in this world. I'm starting to notice. She stepped a little closer, just enough to invade my space without actually touching me. Do you even know who you married? No, I admitted. But I assume you're about to tell me. Her lips curved slightly. He's not someone you survive loving. The words landed heavier than I expected. That's enough. Kang's tone dropped, colder now, final. His jaw tightened slightly. That's not your concern. Right, I said softly. Just like everything else. The distance between us felt different now. Not physical, but something else. Something heavier. And for the first time since I agreed to this, I realized I wasn't just stepping into danger from the outside. I was standing right in the middle of something that had already started long before I arrived. And whatever it wasn't over. The rest of the night passed in a blur, but not the kind that made things easier to forget. If anything, it made everything sharper. Every glance, every whisper, every subtle shift in the room felt amplified after Clara left, like her presence had peeled back a layer I wasn't supposed to see. People still smiled, still talked, still acted like everything was normal, but I could feel the tension underneath it all, like something waiting to snap. We didn't stay much longer after that. At least, I don't think we did. Time felt strange around him, like it moved differently, faster and slower at the same time. One moment we were surrounded by people, the next we were walking out, his hand firm at my back again, guiding me through the crowd without a single word. No one tried to stop him. No one questioned him. That alone said more than anything else. The car ride back was quiet, but this time the silence wasn't neutral. It was heavy. I turned slightly toward the window, watching the city lights blur past, trying to organize the thoughts running through my head. Clara. The way she spoke. The way he reacted. The way he didn't answer my question. Stop thinking so loudly. His voice cut through the silence, calm but unmistakably directed at me. I didn't look at him. Maybe if you answered questions, I wouldn't have to. You're not entitled to all of them. I'm your wife. A contract, he corrected immediately. I let out a quiet breath. Funny. You didn't say that when you introduced me. That got his attention. I could feel it without even turning my head. That was for them, he said. And what is it for you? There was a pause. Not long, but noticeable. Necessary. The word felt colder than anything else he could have said. I nodded slightly, more to myself than to him. Good to know. The rest of the drive fell back into silence, but it wasn't the same kind. Something had shifted again, something small but important. When we arrived back at the mansion, I stepped out of the car before he could say anything, needing space more than anything else. The air outside was cooler, quieter, almost too still compared to the noise of earlier. I started walking toward the entrance, my heels echoing softly against the stone, but something felt off. It wasn't obvious. Not at first. Just a feeling. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not behind me exactly, but close enough to make my chest tighten. I slowed slightly, listening. They slowed too. My heart started beating faster. This wasn't imagination. I turned sharply. Nothing. The driveway was empty. The guards were at their posts. Everything looked normal. Too normal. You shouldn't wander off. His voice came from behind me this time, steady, controlled, but there was something underneath it. Something sharper. I turned toward him, my pulse still uneven. I thought I heard. I know. The way he said it made my stomach drop. You know? His gaze shifted briefly past me, scanning the area with a precision that made it clear this wasn't new to him. Get inside. That's not an explanation. It's not meant to be. Before I could argue, his hand closed around my wrist, not rough, but firm enough that I didn't resist. He led me inside quickly, the doors closing behind us with a quiet finality that made the outside world feel suddenly very far away. What was that? I asked, my voice lower now. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward one of the men standing nearby. Double security. No one in or out without clearance. Yes, sir. Only then did he turn back to me. You were followed. The words hit harder than I expected. By who? If I knew, they wouldn't be out there. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, he said calmly. It's supposed to make you careful. I crossed my arms slightly, trying to steady myself. This is exactly what I was talking about. You pull me into this, and suddenly I'm a target. You were a risk the moment you agreed. I didn't agree to this. You agreed to me, he said, his voice dropping just enough to make the meaning clear. This comes with it. The room felt smaller again. Then maybe you should have chosen someone else. For a second, I thought I saw something shift in his expression. Not anger. Not exactly. Something deeper. But it was gone before I could be sure. I don't repeat decisions, he said. Before I could respond, the lights flickered. Just once. Then everything went dark. The sudden silence was deafening. No hum, no movement, nothing. Just darkness. My breath caught before I could stop it. What? A loud sound echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. Not loud enough to be an explosion, but sharp enough to make my heart jump. Stay behind me. His voice was different now. Not calm. Not distant. Focused. Dangerous. I barely had time to react before I felt his hand find mine in the dark, pulling me closer, positioning me behind him. The gesture was instinctive, protective, and completely at odds with everything he had said earlier. Is this normal? I whispered. No. That was all he said, and somehow it made everything worse. Footsteps approached quickly from the hallway, controlled but urgent. Sir, backup generators are coming online. Security breach on the east side. Handled? Not yet. There was a pause, brief but loaded. I'm going, he said. My grip tightened slightly without thinking. Wait. He turned just enough that I could feel his presence closer again, even in the dark. You're staying here. That's not safe. It's safer than with me. That wasn't reassuring. Another noise echoed faintly, closer this time. My heart started racing again. What if they come inside? They won't. How do you know? There was a brief silence. Then, quieter than before, he said, because I won't let them. And for the first time since I met him, I believed him. Even if I didn't understand why. His hand slipped from mine a second later, and just like that, the distance returned, colder than before. Lock the door, he said, already stepping away. Don't open it for anyone except me. Then he was gone. And I was alone. In the dark. In a house that was no longer just unfamiliar, but under attack. The darkness felt heavier the longer I stood there, like it wasn't just the absence of light, but something pressing in from all sides. I could hear my own breathing, uneven, louder than it should have been, and every small sound in the house seemed amplified. A distant footstep. A door somewhere closing. The faint hum of something trying to come back to life. I moved quickly, forcing myself to focus, and locked the door just like he said. The click sounded louder than expected, final in a way that made my chest tighten. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the door, trying to convince myself that it was enough. That it would hold. Another noise echoed through the hallway. Closer this time. My pulse spiked. No. That wasn't outside. That was inside the house. I took a slow step back, my eyes adjusting slightly to the darkness, searching for anything that could give me a sense of control. There was a faint outline of furniture, the edge of a table, a lamp that wasn't working. Nothing useful. Nothing that would help if someone actually came through that door. Then I heard it. A handle turning. Slowly. Deliberately. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the door, my body going completely still. The lock held for a second. Then pressure. Whoever was on the other side knew exactly what they were doing. Not random. Not careless. They were trying to get in quietly. My heart started pounding so hard it almost hurt. I stepped back again. A sharp sound split through the room as part of the frame gave way. And then, the lights flickered back on. Just for a second. Long enough for me to see the shadow on the other side. Long enough to realize I wasn't imagining any of it. The lights went out again. And the door broke open. I didn't think. I just reacted. I swung the metal object forward the moment the figure stepped inside, the movement clumsy but desperate. It connected with something solid, and a sharp grunt followed. But it wasn't enough. A hand shot out, grabbing my wrist, twisting just enough to make me drop what I was holding. Pain shot up my arm, and before I could react again, I was pulled forward. Got you. The voice was low, unfamiliar, and far too calm. Panic hit hard. I struggled immediately, trying to pull free, but his grip was too strong. My back hit the wall, and for a split second, everything felt like it was closing in. Boss will be interested in you, he muttered. Boss. The word barely registered before everything changed. A loud crack echoed through the room. The grip on my wrist loosened instantly. The man staggered back, a sharp breath leaving him as he collapsed to the floor. For a second, I didn't move. I couldn't. My body hadn't caught up with what just happened. Then I saw him. Standing in the doorway. Gun still raised. Expression cold. Controlled. Dangerous in a way that made everything else disappear. Kang. Are you hurt? His voice cut through the haze, sharper than before, but not panicked. Never panicked. I shook my head, even though my heart was still racing uncontrollably. I don't think so. His gaze scanned me quickly, checking, assessing, making sure. Only when he was satisfied did he lower the gun slightly. Then his attention shifted to the man on the floor. And everything about him changed. The calm didn't disappear. It hardened. He stepped forward slowly, each movement deliberate, and grabbed the man by the collar, pulling him up just enough to look at his face. Who sent you? The man coughed, barely conscious, but he didn't answer. Kang's grip tightened. Wrong answer. I had never seen anything like it before. Not in real life. The way he spoke, the way he looked at him, it wasn't anger. It was something colder. More final. Another voice came from the hallway. Sir, the rest are retreating. We're securing the perimeter. Too late, Kang replied quietly. He didn't look away from the man. Take him, he added. Alive. The command was immediate. No hesitation. No room for argument. Two men entered quickly, taking over, dragging the intruder out without a word. And just like that, it was over. The room fell silent again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was aftermath. I realized I was still pressed against the wall, my hands slightly shaking. I hadn't even noticed. Not until he turned back to me. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just looked at me. Not the distant, controlled look from before. Something else. Something I couldn't quite name. You should have stayed further back, he said finally. I let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Next time I'll try to schedule the attack better. That got a reaction. A small one. But real. Then he stepped closer. Too close. His hand lifted slightly, hesitating for just a fraction of a second before brushing against my arm, like he was checking for injuries again, or something else. You're shaking. I'm fine. You're not. His voice was quieter now. Not soft, but lower. I said I'm fine, I repeated, even though it wasn't entirely true. He studied me for a moment longer, then exhaled slowly, almost like he was letting something go. You're not used to this. No, I said. I'm really not. Another pause. Then, unexpectedly. You shouldn't have been there alone. I looked at him. You told me to stay. I told you to stay safe. That's not the same thing. No, he admitted. It's not. That was the first time he didn't try to win the argument. And somehow, that mattered more than it should have. The distance between us felt different again. Not gone. But not as sharp. And for the first time since this started, I realized something had changed. Not the danger. Not the situation. But him. Just a little. And maybe that was more dangerous than everything else combined. The house didn't go back to normal after that night. It only looked like it did. Lights came back on, guards returned to their positions, staff moved through the halls like nothing had happened, but underneath it all, something had shifted. The silence felt tighter, more alert, like every corner of the mansion was watching, listening, waiting for the next move. And the worst part was, I was part of it now. Whether I wanted to be or not. I didn't sleep. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the door breaking, felt that grip on my wrist, heard that voice too close to my ear. By morning, I had given up trying. The sky outside had just started to lighten when I finally got out of bed and walked toward the window. The world outside looked peaceful, untouched, completely unaware of what had happened just hours ago. It felt unreal. You're awake. His voice came from behind me, quiet but clear. I hadn't heard him enter. That alone said enough. I didn't sleep, I replied without turning around. Expected. I let out a small breath. Is that supposed to be comforting? No. Of course not. I turned to face him. He looked exactly the same as always. Calm. Controlled. Like nothing had happened. But now that I knew what to look for, I could see it. The subtle tension in his shoulders. The slight delay before he spoke. The way his eyes lingered a fraction longer than usual. What happens now? I asked. We find out who sent them. And then? They regret it. The way he said it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was simple. Certain. And that made it far more unsettling. I crossed my arms slightly. You say that like it's already decided. It is. A brief silence settled between us. Was that about me? I asked quietly. His gaze shifted, just slightly. Partially. Partially. Your leverage, he said, not bothering to soften it. But not the main objective. That didn't make me feel better. So I'm just a bonus? You're a variable. I shook my head. You have a very strange way of reassuring people. I'm not trying to reassure you. I noticed. Another pause. Then he stepped closer, stopping just within arm's reach. Did you recognize the man? No. Anything? Voice, accent, movement? I thought back, forcing myself to focus past the fear. No, but he said something. What? Boss will be interested in you. Something in his expression changed at that. Not obvious, but enough. A connection. Say it again. I did. Exactly the same. He nodded slightly, more to himself than to me. That narrows it down. To who? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned slightly, like he was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Get dressed. You're coming with me. I blinked. Excuse me? You're safer where I can see you. I thought you said being with you was dangerous. It is. He looked at me again. But right now, it's less dangerous than leaving you here. I hesitated for a second. Not because I didn't understand, but because I did. And that somehow made it harder. Fine. The drive felt different from the night before. Less controlled. More focused. He didn't look at his phone. Didn't take calls. His attention was entirely on what was ahead, like everything else had been pushed aside. I sat beside him, quieter than usual, watching the city pass by, trying to. Kang sighed softly, almost like he expected that. Then he glanced at me briefly, just for a second, before turning back. You mentioned a boss. Still nothing. Wrong choice. His voice dropped, colder now, and the room seemed to shrink with it. I watched, my hands tightening slightly, not out of fear this time, but something else. Something heavier. This was his world. This was what he did. After a moment, the man finally spoke, his voice rough. You already know. Say it. A pause. Then. Clara. The name hit like a shockwave. I felt it before I even reacted. The connection snapped into place instantly. The party. Her words. The way she looked at him. I turned toward Kang. He didn't react the way I expected. No surprise. No anger. Just confirmation. Of course, he said quietly. Wait, I said, stepping forward slightly. You're telling me she sent someone after me? No, he corrected. After us. That's not better. No, he agreed again. It's not. I looked between them, trying to process it. Why? Kang didn't answer immediately. And somehow, that answer was already there. It's not just business, is it? I said slowly. Silence. Then, finally. No. Just one word. But it was enough. Whatever this was. It was personal. And that made it far more dangerous than anything else we had faced so far. The name stayed in the air longer than it should have. Clara. It didn't just sound like an answer. It sounded like a history I wasn't part of, something that had existed long before I ever stepped into his world. And judging by the way he reacted, it wasn't something small. No one spoke for a moment. The man in the chair lowered his head again, like saying her name had already sealed his fate. The room felt colder, tighter, like the truth had shifted everything into something more dangerous. I looked at Kang, waiting for something more than silence. You knew. It wasn't a question. He didn't deny it. I suspected. That's not the same thing. It's enough. His tone was controlled, but I could hear it now. The edge beneath it. The part of him that didn't show itself unless something actually mattered. I took a slow breath. You could have told me. And what would that change? At least I wouldn't be walking blind into someone else's war. His gaze met mine, steady, unreadable. You already are. That wasn't wrong. And that was exactly the problem. I turned slightly away, trying to process it. So what is she to you? The question hung there, heavier than anything else I had asked so far. He didn't answer immediately. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. She was, he said finally. Was. Not is. But it didn't make it better. How long? Long enough. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Frustration flared, sharper this time. You keep doing that. You give just enough to shut me up, but not enough for me to understand anything. That's intentional. Of course it is. The room fell quiet again, but this time it wasn't just tension. It was something more personal. Something closer. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. She doesn't act like someone who's in the past. No, he admitted. So what happened? His jaw tightened slightly. Not much. Just enough. That's not your concern. There it is again, I said, quieter now. Everything is not my concern until it puts a target on my back. This time, he didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at me. Really looked. Like he was reconsidering something. And for the first time since I met him. He didn't immediately shut the conversation down. She used to be part of this, he said finally. I didn't interrupt. She knew everything. How things worked. Who to trust. Who not to. And you trusted her, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes. That single word carried more weight than anything else. And now? She chose a different side. That explained the attack. But not the way she looked at him. Not the way she spoke. That's not the whole story, I said quietly. No, he agreed. Another pause. Then. She didn't leave alone. Something in my chest tightened slightly. Meaning? She took things with her. Information? Yes. And you let her walk away? His eyes met mine again. At the time, it wasn't a mistake. At the time. So what changed? This time, the pause was longer. Then he said it. You. The word hit harder than I expected. I frowned slightly. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to. No, I said, shaking my head. You don't get to say something like that and leave it there. His expression didn't change, but something in the air did. Something quieter. More dangerous in a different way. You're part of this now, he said. Which means anything connected to me, connects to you. That's not what I meant. I know. Silence. Then, softer than before. That's why she came back. The realization settled slowly, but when it did, it stayed. This isn't just about power, I said. No. It's about you. He didn't answer. But he didn't deny it either. And somehow, that was worse. I stepped back slightly, putting space between us again, even though it didn't feel like enough. So what now? We finish it. And me? His gaze didn't waver. You stay close. That's not a plan. It's the only one that works. I let out a quiet breath, looking away for a second before meeting his eyes again. You keep saying that like I don't have a choice. You don't. There was no hesitation. No apology. Just truth. And for the first time, I didn't argue. Because deep down, I knew he was right. The moment I took his hand, I stopped having a choice. The tension didn't fade after that conversation. If anything, it followed us out of the room, lingering in the silence between every step we took. I could feel it in the way the air seemed heavier, like something was building just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to break through. And the worst part was, I didn't know when that moment would come. We didn't stay much longer. Orders were given, quiet and precise, and everything moved quickly after that. Whoever was working for Clara had already been identified as a threat, which meant this wasn't over. Not even close. The drive back felt shorter this time, or maybe I was just too lost in my thoughts to notice. Everything was starting to connect in ways I didn't like. The attack. The party. The way she looked at him. The way he didn't stop her when she left that night. You're thinking again. His voice pulled me back. I'm trying to understand, I replied. Don't. I turned slightly toward him. That's not helpful. It's not meant to be. I exhaled slowly, looking out the window again. You really expect me to just stand next to you and pretend none of this matters? Yes. I almost laughed. You're unbelievable. And you agreed to it. That shut me up faster than I wanted to admit. The car slowed. We hadn't reached the mansion yet. I frowned slightly, glancing around. This isn't. I know. The car came to a complete stop. Before I could ask anything else, the door on his side opened. Not by him. My entire body tensed instantly. A familiar voice followed. You really should change your routes more often. Clara. Of course it was her. She stood just outside, composed as ever, like this wasn't reckless at all. Like stopping his car in the middle of nowhere was just another casual decision. The men around her were armed, silent, positioned carefully. This wasn't a coincidence. No, she said softly. But it's still true. I held her gaze, refusing to step back. You tried to have me taken. I tried to get your attention, she corrected. That's a strange way of doing it. It worked, didn't it? I didn't answer. Because she wasn't wrong. Kang stepped slightly in front of me then, not enough to block me completely, but enough to make a statement. Subtle. Possessive. Clara noticed. Of course she did. That's new, she said, almost thoughtfully. You didn't use to stand in front of people. That was before. And this, she gestured lightly toward me. This is the difference. Silence. That was all the answer she needed. Something changed in her expression then. Not anger. Not exactly. Something sharper. Something more dangerous. You always were predictable when it mattered, she said quietly. And you always overestimated your position, he replied. For a second, it felt like everything might snap right there. The air, the tension, the fragile line holding everything together. Then she smiled. And somehow, that was worse. You should be careful, she said, her voice softer now, almost calm. The more you protect something, the easier it is to break you with it. Her eyes met mine again. And you, she added, should start asking yourself one question. I didn't respond. She stepped closer. Just one step. Enough to make it clear she wasn't afraid. Are you worth the war he's about to start? The words landed heavier than anything else she had said. Before I could react, Kang moved. Fast. Controlled. His hand caught her wrist mid-step, stopping her instantly. Not rough. But final. That's enough. His voice dropped, colder than I had ever heard it before. For a moment, no one moved. Then she looked down at his hand, and back up at him. You're already too late, she said quietly. That was the moment everything shifted. Not slowly. Not subtly. Completely. Because whatever this was, it had already started. The moment she said it, I felt it. Not just the words, but the certainty behind them. You're already too late. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. And somehow, that made it worse. Kang's grip on her wrist tightened just slightly, not enough to show anger, but enough to make it clear he wasn't letting go without a reason. For a second, everything around us felt completely still. No movement. No sound. Just that single moment stretched too far. Then, a sharp noise cut through the air. Not close. But not far enough. Gunfire. Everything happened at once. Kang released her instantly and turned toward me, his hand already pulling me back, positioning me behind him without hesitation. The men around us moved just as fast, weapons raised, voices low and controlled, calling out positions I didn't fully understand. This wasn't me, Clara said sharply, her tone shifting for the first time. He didn't answer her. Another shot echoed, closer this time. My heart slammed against my chest as instinct took over. This wasn't a warning. This was real. This was happening. Inside the car, he said, his voice low and firm. I'm not leaving you. That's not a request. The way he said it left no room to argue. Before I could respond again, his hand tightened around mine, pulling me toward the car, his body angled just enough to shield me from the direction of the sound. Every movement was precise, controlled, like he had done this 100 times before. Someone shouted from the side. We've got movement, multiple, north side. Multiple. That word hit hard. This wasn't a small attack. This was planned. I reached the car, my hands shaking slightly as I grabbed the handle, but I didn't get inside right away. I turned back. You said this was safer. It was, he replied, already scanning the area, calculating. It's not anymore. That didn't help. Another shot rang out, closer again, followed by the sound of something hitting metal. One of the cars nearby. Too close. Way too close. Clara moved then, fast, her expression no longer calm, no longer controlled. "This isn't my team," she said again, sharper this time. "If I wanted him dead, he'd already be dead." "That's a bold claim," Kang replied without looking at her. "It's a true one." A brief pause. Then we have a bigger problem," he said. I felt it again. That shift. The one that meant things were about to get worse. "What do you mean bigger?" I asked, my voice tighter now. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for the car door, opened it, and pushed me inside. "Stay down." I grabbed his sleeve before he could pull away. "No. You don't get to just throw me in here and walk into that." His eyes met mine. For a second, everything else faded. "You trust me?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. Of all the things he could have said, that wasn't what I expected. Another shot echoed, louder this time, breaking the moment. "Do you?" he repeated, sharper now. I didn't have time to think. "Yes." The word came out before I could stop it. Something in his expression changed. Not much. But enough. "Then stay down," he said. And this time, I listened. He closed the door, and just like that, I was separated from everything happening outside. The glass wasn't completely soundproof. I could still hear it. The movement. The voices. The gunfire. My hands tightened in my lap as I leaned down, trying to stay out of sight, trying to follow his instructions, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. This wasn't just about Clara. This was something else. Something bigger. Another voice echoed faintly from outside, closer to the car now. "They're not ours. Not ours." That confirmed it. Clara wasn't lying. Which meant someone else was behind this. And they were bold enough to attack both of them at the same time. The realization settled in hard. This wasn't a conflict anymore. This was a war. A loud impact hit the side of the car, making me flinch violently. My breath caught as I instinctively pressed lower, my heart racing uncontrollably. Footsteps. Right outside. Too close. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me not to move, not to make a sound, but my body felt like it was locked in place anyway. The handle moved. My chest tightened so fast it almost hurt. No. No, no, no. The door jerked slightly. Then stopped. A second later, a body slammed against it from the outside. Hard. Followed by another sound. A struggle. Then silence. Heavy breathing. And then the door opened. I looked up sharply. And saw him. Kang. Alive. Unshaken. Focused. "Out," he said immediately, reaching for me. I didn't hesitate this time. I grabbed his hand, letting him pull me out as he quickly scanned the area again. "We're leaving," he added. "What about? Clara can handle herself." As if on cue, another shot rang out from the opposite side, followed by a voice shouting orders. She wasn't running. She was fighting. That alone told me everything I needed to know about her. We moved quickly, his grip firm, steady, pulling me toward another vehicle. The world around us felt chaotic, loud, unpredictable, but somehow, he wasn't. Not even a little. "Get in," he said, opening the door. I paused for just a second. This wasn't her. I know. Then who? His expression hardened slightly. "That's what we're about to find out." I got in without another word. Because at that moment, I understood something clearly for the first time. Clara wasn't the biggest threat anymore. She was just part of it. And whoever was pulling the strings behind all of this was finally making. Then this was a trap. Yes. I turned toward him fully now. You used me. That got his attention. His grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly before relaxing again. I protected you. That's not the same thing. No, he admitted. It's not. The honesty caught me off guard. Then what is it? I pressed. Another pause. Then. It's both. That answer hit harder than a lie would have. I looked away, my chest tightening slightly. You could have told me. And put you in more danger? I was already in danger. Yes, he said quietly. But controlled. I let out a soft, almost humorless laugh. That's your version of control? It was working. Until it didn't. Silence fell again, heavier this time. Then he spoke, lower than before. They moved sooner than I expected. That made me look back at him. Who is they? For the first time. He didn't answer immediately. And that alone told me this was different. Bigger. Someone who doesn't make mistakes, he said finally. That's not very specific. It's not supposed to be. I exhaled slowly. You really don't trust me with anything, do you? That's not it. Then what is it? This time, he glanced at me briefly before looking back at the road. If I tell you everything, you don't get to walk away. The words landed quietly. But they stayed. I frowned slightly. I already can't walk away. That's not true. Yes, it is. No, he said, more firmly now. Right now, you still have a way out. I stared at him, trying to understand what he meant. And if I stay? His voice dropped. Then you're part of this for real. A pause. No distance. No protection. No pretending. Something in my chest shifted at that. Not fear. Not exactly. Something deeper. Isn't that already the case? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. Because we both knew, it wasn't. Not yet. The car slowed as we turned into a private underground garage, the entrance hidden enough that no one would notice it unless they were looking for it. The gates closed behind us with a heavy sound that echoed through the space. Safe. For now. He parked but didn't move right away. Neither did I. The engine went silent. And suddenly, everything felt louder. You should go, he said. I blinked. What? I can arrange it. New identity. Safe location. Your brother gets the surgery. You disappear. The offer came out calm. Clean. Like it had already been planned. I stared at him, trying to process it. You're serious? Yes. After everything, you're just going to send me away? It's the safest option. For who? For you. I let out a slow breath, looking down at my hands before back at him. And what about you? That's not your concern. There it was again. But this time, it didn't feel the same. Right, I said softly. Everything is never my concern. He didn't respond. The silence stretched. Then I opened the door. He looked at me immediately. Where are you going? Inside. That's not what I meant. I paused, then turned slightly toward him. I'm not leaving. The words came out steady. Clear. No hesitation. Something in his expression shifted again. Slower this time. More visible. You should. Probably, I admitted. But I'm not. Why? The question caught me off guard for just a second. But only a second. Because this stopped being just a contract a while ago, I said quietly. The air between us changed instantly. Not loud. Not dramatic. but undeniable. And you don't get to decide everything for me. He held my gaze, longer this time, like he was trying to read something deeper than my words. You don't understand what you're choosing, he said finally. No, I admitted. But I understand enough. Another pause. Then. That makes you more dangerous than you think. A faint smile touched my lips, despite everything. I'm starting to notice. For the first time since all of this started. He didn't look at me like I was just part of a plan. He looked at me like I was part of the problem. And somehow, that felt like progress. The decision didn't settle immediately. Even after we stepped out of the car, even after the doors closed behind us and the outside world was sealed off again, it stayed there, hanging between us. Unspoken, but undeniable. I wasn't leaving. And for the first time since this began, that wasn't part of his plan. The hallway felt quieter than usual as we walked through it, but not empty. Controlled. Watched. Like every movement was being tracked, every detail recorded. I could feel it now, the deeper layer beneath everything. This wasn't just a house. It was a system. And I had just chosen to stay inside it. You should get some rest, he said as we reached the stairs. I almost laughed. After that? You'll need it. For what? He stopped walking. Just for a second. Then continued. That depends on how fast this escalates. That wasn't reassuring. I followed him anyway, my steps slower now, my mind catching up with everything that had changed in the last few hours. The attack. Clara. The fact that she wasn't the real threat. The fact that he had expected something worse, and now it had arrived. When we reached the upper floor, he didn't go to his office. He stopped outside my room. You stay here tonight, he said. I frowned slightly. That's where I already was. Not alone. The words caught me off guard. Before I could respond, he opened the door and stepped inside, scanning the room quickly, his movements precise, practiced. Checking. Always checking. You think they'll try again? I asked quietly. They won't wait long. Because of tonight? Because now they know you matter. That landed harder than anything else. I crossed my arms slightly. I thought I was just a variable. You were. The way he said it made me look at him again. And now? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked further into the room, stopping near the window, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond the glass. Thinking. Calculating. Then. They're not testing me anymore, he said. I felt the shift instantly. They're forcing a reaction. And you know who it is. It wasn't a question. This time, he didn't avoid it. Yes. The word felt heavier than it should have. Then who? He turned toward me slowly, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharper than before. Someone who built this world with me. My chest tightened slightly. What does that mean? It means, he said calmly, everything you've seen so far, every structure, every connection, every rule. He paused, just briefly, wasn't created by me alone. The realization hit fast. You had a partner. Yes. And now? He wants it back. The room felt smaller. Back? Control, he clarified. Power. Everything. And you just walked away? No, he said. I took it. That explained everything. The precision. The timing. The scale. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. What's his name? I asked quietly. For the first time. There was hesitation. Not long. But enough. Then he said it. Victor. The name settled into the room like it carried weight on its own. Victor, I repeated slowly. And Clara works for him? No. That surprised me. She works with him, he corrected. That was worse. So this is bigger than just you and her. Yeah, and if I leave? His expression didn't change. You won't. That should have sounded like a warning. But it didn't. It sounded like certainty. And somehow, I believed him. That night didn't feel like the others. It wasn't just the tension, or the knowledge that something bigger was coming. It was the certainty. The kind that settles deep and refuses to leave. Victor wasn't a possibility anymore. He was real. Active. Moving. And whatever he was planning, it had already started. I didn't go to sleep right away. Even after everything quieted down, even after the house returned to its controlled silence, I stayed awake, sitting near the window, watching the darkness outside like I expected it to move. Like I expected him to appear out of it. You're not sleeping. His voice came from behind me again, quieter this time, less distant than usual. No, I admitted. You should. I don't think I can. A brief pause. Then I felt it. His presence closer than before. Not just near. Close. You're overthinking, he said. Someone tried to take me last night, I replied softly. I think I've earned the right to overthink. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Silence. Then, unexpectedly. That you're still here. The words were simple. But they stayed. I turned slightly, just enough to look at him. You told me to leave. I did. And now? Another pause. I haven't asked again. That was true. I studied him for a second longer than I meant to. You don't seem like someone who changes his mind. I don't. Then why haven't you? His gaze held mine. And for a moment. He didn't look like someone calculating outcomes or controlling situations. He looked like someone deciding something he didn't want to admit. Before he could answer, a sharp sound cut through the silence. Not loud. But wrong. A phone. Not mine. Not his. Somewhere else in the room. We both reacted at the same time. His head turned instantly toward the source. My eyes followed. On the table. A phone neither of us had placed there. My chest tightened immediately. That wasn't there before. I know. He moved first, slow but deliberate, his entire focus locked on the device like it could explode at any second. Don't touch it, I said instinctively. I wasn't planning to. The phone rang again. Once. Twice. Then stopped. The screen lit up. One message. No number. No name. Just text. He picked it up this time. Carefully. I stepped closer without thinking. What does it say? His eyes scanned it once. Then again. And for the first time since I met him. Something real crossed his expression. Not fear. But something close. What? I pressed. He turned the screen toward me. A single line. Check the parking level. My stomach dropped instantly. That's where we came in. I know. His voice was already different. Sharper. Faster. He was moving before I could say anything else. Stay here. No. This time, I didn't hesitate. I'm not staying behind again. You don't know what this is. And you do? A pause. Yes. That stopped me. What is it? His jaw tightened slightly. A message. That's obvious. No, he said, quieter now. A statement. The way he said it made everything worse. Before I could ask more, he was already heading for the door. And this time, I followed anyway. The descent to the parking level felt longer than it should have. Every step echoed too loudly, every second stretched too thin. The deeper we went, the colder the air became, like we were walking straight into something waiting for us. No guards. That was the first thing I noticed. The second. Too quiet. The lights flickered once as we stepped onto the level. Then steadied. Cars lined the space exactly where they should be. Nothing looked out of place. And that was the problem. "This is wrong," I whispered. "I know." He didn't slow down. He moved forward, scanning everything, every angle, every shadow. Then he stopped. Just for a second. I followed his gaze. And saw it. A car. One I didn't recognize. Parked slightly out of line. Driver's door open. My chest tightened. "That wasn't here before." "No," he said quietly. Then. A voice echoed through the space. Calm. Controlled. Familiar in a way that made my stomach drop instantly. "You're still predictable." Everything in me went still. From behind the car. A man stepped forward. Tall. Composed. Dressed in dark precision, like everything about him had been planned down to the smallest detail. His eyes moved from Kang to me. And lingered. Long enough to make it clear. He already knew exactly who I was. "Victor," Kang said. No surprise. No hesitation. Just confirmation. The man smiled slightly. Not warm. Not friendly. Measured. "It's been a while." The air between them shifted instantly. Not tension. Not exactly. Something deeper. History. Power. Something unfinished. "You shouldn't have come here," Kang said. "And miss this?" Victor's gaze flicked toward me again. That would have been disappointing. I felt it then. Not fear. Not fully. But awareness. This man wasn't like the others. He wasn't loud. He wasn't chaotic. He was certain. "You've changed," Victor continued, almost casually. "You never used to bring weaknesses into your space." "I don't." Victor's smile widened slightly. "Then what is she?" Silence. I didn't look away this time. "Someone you underestimated," I said calmly. His attention shifted to me fully now. Interest. Real interest. "That's new," he murmured. Before he could say more. Everything happened at once. A sharp movement behind us. Footsteps. Too many. Too fast. Kang reacted instantly, pulling me back, positioning himself between me and the sound just as shadows moved from both sides of the level. Surrounded. My heart slammed against my chest. "This is what I meant," Victor said calmly. "You're already too late." The realization hit hard. This wasn't just a meeting. This was a setup. A trap we had already walked into. And this time. There was no easy way out. Everything closed in at once. The shadows moved faster than I could track, surrounding us from every direction, cutting off every possible exit before I could even think of one. It wasn't messy. It wasn't chaotic. It was precise. Planned. Controlled in a way that made it clear this wasn't just an ambush, it was something far worse. A trap. And we had walked straight into it. Kang's hand tightened around mine, just for a second, before shifting his grip, pulling me slightly behind him again. The movement was automatic, instinctive, like protecting me wasn't even something he had to think about anymore. "Stay close," he said under his breath. "I am," I replied, my voice lower now, steadier than I expected. But my heart was anything but steady. Victor didn't move. He didn't need to. The men around us already had their weapons raised, their positions locked in perfectly. He just stood there, watching, like everything was unfolding exactly the way he wanted. "You always did prefer direct solutions," Victor said calmly. But this, his gaze flicked briefly to me, this complicates things. Say what you came to say, Kang replied, his voice colder than before. Victor smiled. Kang moved like he had done this his entire life, every step calculated, every movement precise, pulling me with him, shielding me whenever he could. But even that wasn't enough. This wasn't a fight meant to be won. It was meant to divide. And it worked. A hand grabbed me from behind. Hard. Sudden. I gasped, trying to pull free, but the grip tightened instantly, dragging me backward before I could react. Kang. The name left my lips before I could stop it. He turned immediately. Too late. Another shot forced him back, cutting the distance between us in half before he could reach me. No. My voice broke as I struggled, trying to break free, but the man behind me was stronger, faster, already pulling me away. Let her go. That was the first time I heard it. Not control. Not calculation. Something else. Raw. Dangerous in a completely different way. For a second, everything slowed. Our eyes met. Across the distance. Across the chaos. And in that moment, nothing else existed. Not the gunfire. Not the men around us. Just that look. Don't fight them, he shouted. I froze for half a second. What? Don't. A blow from behind cut him off, forcing him back again. My heart dropped. Kang. But this time, he didn't answer. Hands tightened around me, pulling me further back, faster now, away from him, away from everything I knew, everything that had just started to make sense. No. I struggled harder, panic rising fast. Stop. Enough. Victor's voice cut through everything. Calm. Final. The men stopped. Not completely. But enough. Enough to create space. Enough to end it. I was forced to my knees, my breath uneven, my hands restrained, my entire body tense with adrenaline and fear. Across from me, Kang was held back. Not injured. But contained. Barely. And still fighting it. Victor stepped forward slowly, his gaze moving between us, measuring, calculating, satisfied in a way that made my stomach turn. This, he said quietly, is what happens when you lose focus. Kang didn't respond. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said enough. If he could move. If he could break free. This would end very differently. But he couldn't. Not now. Victor stopped in front of me. Close enough that I could feel the weight of his presence. You're more important than I expected, he said, almost thoughtfully. I didn't answer. I didn't look away either. That seemed to amuse him. Interesting, he murmured. Then. He turned slightly. Take her. The words hit like a shock. Everything in me went cold. No. I struggled instantly, but it didn't matter. They were already pulling me up, dragging me back again, this time with no hesitation, no pause. Kang. This time, my voice broke completely. He moved. Hard. Violent enough that the men holding him almost lost control. Don't touch her. That was the second time. And it hit even harder. But it didn't change anything. It didn't stop them. Nothing did. As they pulled me away, I caught one last glimpse of him. Still fighting. Still trying to break through. Still not giving up. And for the first time since all of this started, I understood something completely. This was no longer about survival. Not just his. Not just mine. But us. And right now, we were losing. Time felt different when you didn't know where you were. There were no windows. No clear sense of direction. Just walls, silence, and the faint echo of footsteps that came and went without warning. I didn't know how long it had been since they brought me here. Minutes. Hours. It all blurred together until it stopped mattering. What did matter was that I was alone. At least, for now. My hands weren't tied anymore, but the door was locked, heavy enough that I knew forcing it wasn't an option. Not without help. Not without a plan. And right now, I didn't have one. I paced the small space slowly, forcing myself to stay focused, to think, to not let the fear take over completely. Victor didn't strike me as someone careless. If he took me, there was a reason. And if there was a reason, then I was still useful. That was the only advantage I had. The sound of a lock turning cut through the silence. I stopped instantly. The door opened. And he stepped in. Victor. Alone. Of course he was. You're calmer than I expected, he said, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. I'm still here, I replied. That's a good sign. A faint smile touched his lips. You adapt quickly. I don't have much of a choice. No, he agreed. You don't. He stepped further into the room, slow, controlled, like everything about him was measured. Nothing rushed. Nothing wasted. You're not what I thought you'd be, he continued. Disappointing? Unexpected. That wasn't comforting. I crossed my arms slightly, holding his gaze. So what now? He tilted his head just slightly, studying me. Now we see how valuable you really are. I didn't respond immediately. Meaning? Meaning, he said calmly, your leverage. There it was. At least he didn't pretend otherwise. Against him. Yes. I let out a slow breath. Then why am I still in one piece? Another small smile. Because I don't break things before I use them. Cold. But honest. That was the dangerous part. You're making a mistake, I said quietly. That's unlikely. You think this will make him give in? No, Victor replied. I know it won't. That stopped me. Then what's the point? He stepped closer. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just certain. To see how far he's willing to go. My chest tightened slightly. And if he doesn't? Victor's gaze didn't waver. Then you were never important. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because I believed them. But because part of me wasn't completely sure anymore. I looked away for just a second, then back at him. You don't understand him. No, he said calmly. I understand him better than you do. Silence. Then. You think he came for power, Victor continued. Control. Influence. That's not all of it. No, he agreed. It never is. Another pause. Then his voice lowered slightly. But people like him don't change. I shook my head. You're wrong. Am I? Yes. For the first time, something in his expression shifted. Not much. But enough to show interest again. He didn't have to come back for me, I said. No, Victor agreed. But he did. That means something. It means you're useful. That's not the same thing. No, he said again. It's not. The silence stretched between us, heavier now, sharper. Then. A knock at the door. Victor didn't look away from me. Yes? Movement confirmed, a voice said from outside. He's coming. My heart skipped. Just one beat. But it was enough. Victor noticed. Of course he did. There it is, he said softly. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Let's see if you're right, he added. Then he stepped back, turning toward the door. Bring her. The command was immediate. Final. Before I could react, the door opened again, and two men stepped inside. I didn't resist this time. Not because I couldn't, but because I understood. This was the moment. He exhaled, just slightly, like he was giving in to something he had been holding back this entire time. "You don't make this easy," he said. I almost smiled. "I'm starting to notice." For a moment, everything felt still again. But different this time. Not because the danger was gone. It wasn't. Not completely. But because something else had changed. Something that couldn't be undone anymore. The contract was never just a contract. And whatever this was now, it wasn't something either of us could walk away from. Not anymore.